Brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County, this is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow.
This is the 411 on Leadership podcast. My name is Steve Thomas, and to my right this time, he's over to my left. To my right this time, it is John Campbell. Here we're talking about inclusive leadership and what the role of passion has to do with or is related to inclusive leadership. John, how you doing this morning, my friend?
Man, Steve, I am doing good. If I was any better, I'd be in trouble. So, it's good to be here. Good to see you, man. I know this morning, as always happens with us, when, especially in leadership positions, sometimes unexpected things happen and make the morning a little stressful. But we're here. We got it going.
We did. And John's just referring to a little power outage over in my part of town, which caused a little bit of problems, but that's okay. We are here, and we are excited to have our guests join us. By the way, we are brought to you by Sitch Radio. If you're looking at starting your own podcast and telling your own story or telling the stories of others and inspiring others, instructing others, or motivating others, and you want to do that via podcast, definitely talk to our man, Brian, who runs Sitch Radio. You can find him at sitchradio.com, and he's ready to meet all of your podcasting needs. And as we do this podcast, what can we do, or people that are looking for the podcast, John, what can people do that will help us to grow our audience and to reach more people?
Absolutely. If you're with us this morning watching it live, or you're listening to the recording, or you're watching it later on YouTube or LinkedIn, we really want to hear from you. You provide content, your questions, even your follow-ups that we can talk about on a later show. It really makes a difference, and we would really appreciate it. It means a lot to Steve and I. If you could like, subscribe, and join us for future conversations, really means a lot to us, so thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, listen, also, if you've got any questions to add on that as well during this podcast, feel free to put those in the comment section. We will watch our comment section, and we will address those questions, whether it be to the guests or us, throughout this podcast. Well, listen, we are excited to have a particular guest with us on the podcast this morning. I know John's super excited about it, being the beer brewery guy that he is. And so we're excited to have Marcel Favela joining us on this morning's podcast. Marcel is an entrepreneur, business owner, just overall visionary with over a decade of experience in startups and also big corporations. He's held positions in marketing, management, finance, operations, just making him just all knowledgeable in all areas of business. In 2013, he had founded X Brewing that now has 2 locations, one location being in San Diego, another location being here in LA. And so also would like to mention too that he is also consulting with Green Flash Brewing Company as well, leading and developing their procurement planning department. And I think he would be excited about this most notable accomplishment. He is also a brand new father of a wonderful baby boy. And obviously, we know his wife, Denise, who is awesome in her own right. So let's all welcome in Marcel. Marcel, how is everything doing, my friend?
Perfect. Happy to be with you two today, this morning. Glad to be here to contribute any way I can. Just sharing the knowledge, the experience, and just learn from you guys as well.
Well, Marcel, we're excited to have you on it, and we want to learn more about you. So, tell us, what would be the 3 words that you would choose to describe your leadership journey to this point?
So it would be people, systems, and finance, because definitely those 3 are kind of the fundamentals for me.
And why do those particularly stand out for you, Marcel?
Because you got to create first before you even start the business. When we created Border X, that was the first thing that we worked. It was in the systems. Creating predictable results only happens if you actually put time. It doesn't happen magically. So you have to actually put the time in first, and then work on the people. Those are the puzzles that go within your system, and just trying to make sure putting the time as well beforehand on hiring the right people. Otherwise, this system doesn't work. And then lastly, you got to be at least a little bit financial savvy, at least know how to read a cash flow statement, a balance sheet, P&L, and that will get you farther away, like closer actually to your vision, to your goal, to whatever you're shooting for. And that way you can communicate a little bit better, because numbers, data, it's actually a little bit easier to communicate to your employees and customers, because it's not biased. It's just what it is. So it's a little bit more neutral, a little bit less segregating, more inclusive. So those three are actually the fundamentals of what I think a good leader should have.
Well, and if I can drill down a little bit on, I mean, one of the things that we haven't really got into yet, Steve, is what kind of metrics do we look at when we evaluate ourselves in leadership? And I think, Marcel, you keyed on that. Obviously, financials. We're all in business. The business has to be successful financially, or there's no more business. And
Yes.
as you mentioned, people's lives depend on that. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is a major metric. It's a tool for us to be able to use to evaluate the effectiveness of our leadership, our product, where we're positioning, all those kind of things.
Definitely. Yeah, you have to be a little bit, what I like about this approach is it's a little bit holistic. You see the big picture, you put the work up front, and then you drill down. Some people like their businesses to be a little bit more exciting or risky. But for me personally, I like my businesses to be boring, because at least in that aspect of systems, people, and finance, because it's predictable, you know what to expect. And then from there, it's an awesome platform that you can actually work from to actually be creative, be innovative. And because if you're working under stress and you're not making in payroll, you're scavenging just enough money to pay rent, that's not fun at all. Like, that risk completely goes away. So for me, financial definitely is and putting the work up front, looking at stuff holistically is definitely the number one thing for a good leader, a good entrepreneur.
So Marcel, what would you say then in your journey to this point, what would you say is the most impactful lesson that you've learned when founding your breweries and when leading your people there? What would you say is that one important lesson that you've learned that you continue to refer back to, when things get a little crazy, like right now, in terms of like just what's going on in our business world?
Yeah, the biggest lesson is be humble, delegate, and understand that people are different than you. They're not going to do exactly what you're asking for, but if you give them enough leeway, and I read it in a book as well, you should be able to give them the test, like tell them what you're scoring them on. That way they satisfy you, they satisfy the vision of the company, and that way everybody kind of wins. Everybody is winning, and that's kind of the philosophy that I'm shooting for. I don't like to be like too chaotic, and as Dale Carnegie says, try to avoid an argument. That's the best solution for an argument. So always try to be like win-win, and that way everybody's kind of like contributing in a positive way, bringing the energy up. But being humble, knowing your limits, knowing that you maybe know how to do it, but you cannot possibly run a whole business yourself. Even if you wanted to, in paper, you can set it up. That's as much as you can. And the rest for you as a leader is to actually put the pieces together. You're building a team. You're building a family. You're building culture. You're growing it every day by the actions you take. Good habits on you reflect on others. So yeah, being humble, good habits. It's definitely number one. It was humbling for me too, because at the beginning we started super small. It was a little warehouse in next to the border. It was my brother and I, and my uncle and my dad. But my brother and I were working 9 to 5, and then working to make beer on the nights and weekends, and we only opened Friday and Saturday. So from there we had everything. But if you plan to grow, make a company big enough for it to be impactful on your community, push your vision, or influence in a positive way your community with your company, you got to make money. And for that, you have to hire the right people and pretty much just be on top of that always. And yeah, always be humbled and don't let your ego take over.
Well, and I appreciate, man, I'm so happy that we get a chance to talk with you today. As Steve mentioned, I enjoy craft beer, and
Okay.
something that my wife and I, we get to do together, which is amazing. We take
Mhm.
trips together to explore those things. And one of the things that I've enjoyed, I've really seen kind of two parts when it comes to craft beer industry, and I'd love for you to expand on it, especially from a leadership perspective. Obviously, the product has to be good, and
Mhm.
people have to enjoy what you're making. And I, as I've expanded some of my knowledge, so much science goes into making good craft. But then I've also noticed the other side that really promotes the business. As you said, people are so fundamental to it that, you can go to places with the best product, but the people there aren't, and you don't want to go back again, or vice versa. You can sometimes put
Mhm.
up with a mediocre product, but the people are fantastic. How have you had to manage those things from the leadership perspective?
So for us, it was super customer driven, and it starts like customer, employee. They're people. We got to treat them the same way, respectfully. Just be uh, creating an eager want on people's, even if they're customers, your employees, everybody. You got to find that core passion that people have, their interest. Like you said. Beer it's the same situation. Beer, my wife, just we go to every brewery we can, and yeah, I know they're gonna be special because at least craft breweries take that extra step to make an original idea come to life, and
Yeah.
it all starts from their head. um by customer service, definitely you can tell when somebody is lacking that kind of soft skills, and in their employees which are like too mechanical, maybe rude.
Right.
For us Border X, we try to always ask the question, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Have you tried craft beer before? Like at least really be interested in that person. Because otherwise, like they're not going to care. Like maybe they're like, oh no, I don't drink craft beer ever. The biggest thing that I realized and that I love in the craft beer industry with our company is we took the culture of craft beer, and specifically in San Diego, and combined it with my heritage that I grew up in Mexico next to the border. So I got exposed to all these flavors. So I can cater all these beers to specific palates for people that actually show up to our tasting room, and actually by being interested in them, I can actually offer them like a specific product, and I come off as like being really genuine, having open ears to them, like creating space for them to kind of enjoy the beer as well. So it's a fine balance, but it literally is just controlling that anxiety that sometimes happens when it's really busy. I think that's when it comes to like your training and kind of hiring the right people to know that they're going to hold up under pressure. Even if you have like a line of people, what's going to come first, the money or the experience? So you always have to by having good values yourself and your and hiring employees that are similar to you, you're obviously like gonna explain to the people behind them that it's gonna take a little while, but everybody's gonna be having this unique experience with us. Not just like a fast food kind of thing. Just here's your beer, like thank you, give us your money, and try to avoid that transactional aspect of it. So
Sure.
that's usually what I strive for, and what I train the employees to be at.
So I have to concur on one of your stories because, as you know, Marcel, and I know John, you know this well. So I'm not a big beer drinker. Let's be honest and transparent with that. But one of the things that I have to co-sign is that when we had conversations, Marcel, I remember one of the things that you told me about beer, and you were just mentioning that, you know, there is a beer out there for everybody. You just
Yes.
you just hadn't found it yet. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, all right, you know, whatever. Until you introduced me to one of the beers that you have there at the brewery. It's the horchata stout.
Yes.
And I tried that and I was like, okay, this dude's for real. You know, okay, it's true. And why I bring that up is because you had just mentioned there is like taking interest in the people that you come in contact with as it relates to prospective clients, and bringing
Right.
people into the brewery and seeing finding out what more interests them, what are their taste palettes are like, and then formulating a specific beer, at least recommending a specific beer for that person. And so, and that's how absolutely, for this one beer, when I go, I have to have that because, because like I said, Marcel, you got me on that one. You definitely got me on that one. So I definitely concur 100%. By the way, we're talking with Marcel Favela, and he is the co-founder of Border X Brewery. And John, I think you had something that you wanted to get out real quick. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
Okay, perfect.
And again, we want your comments. If you're listening, you're watching, we want to hear from you. If you've got questions for either Steve or myself or Marcel, we want to be able to bring that up. So.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Marcel, had a question for you. So a few weeks back, John and myself, we were talking about specific things that were happening within the craft brewing industry, and that was just the role of the sexism and the sexual abuse that was happening towards women within the industry. And so just wanted to get your thoughts on you as we're talking about this idea of inclusive leadership, and also being the role of being passionate about not only your product but also your people as well. If you mind just sharing your thoughts on not only when you saw this story, but then how does that influence or impact the way you treat your employees, more specifically the women that work with you in the brewery?
Sure. Firstly, that was horrible that all that came like the way it did. In any business, in any industry, it shouldn't be happening. Regardless if it's a brewing industry or whatever industry. Like I said, if how you act reflects on your business and the culture it creates. Even if you tell people don't do what I do, they're still going to do it because we're humans, and we usually mimic people that we hang around with, and unconsciously it just goes into our head. And one interesting thing, it's like the brewing industry actually started by women brewing, like 9,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. So that was like the women were the ones making beer. Firstly, it all kind of got with history, like religion, a little bit of war with the Romans and the Germanic cultures and the guilds. Everything kind of shifted more into like a male-dominated kind of business industry. But historically, that's why I like holistically and being passionate about something. Because if you dig deep enough, like you'll find like a story or a source of like the other person that maybe gets judged or is the underdog or whatever. But sometimes they're the ones who actually started the whole movement. You have to be a little bit more informed, be more patient. That always like gives you a better outcome than just like judging people in general. And like another thing, my wife works for Del Carnegie, so like the principles are in my head, so don't criticize, condemn, or complain. So definitely like never judge people before you actually like know them like fully and know their passion, their background. They can be way different than what you expect. But for us as a business, going back to your question, Steve, being inclusive for me has always been a thing because like humans, we're beings. So at the source of everything, like I said, like I'm really spiritual, and I like to like just see the person as they are in the center, in the core. So for me, I just talk to them. Personality is the first thing. You cannot teach that. That usually comes up first. Smiling, just their overall demeanor. That's kind of what I look for. Not really like where they come from or like what religion, what race, and everything like that. That comes like it shouldn't even be considered at this point. Like we're in a modern age, and I think we've determined that we're equal and everybody has the same opportunities, and definitely let the systems do the filtering or whatever. Like just all your decisions should be based on your systems, on the KPIs, on performance, and not really on your personal feeling or whatever judgment or history that the leader has. That usually is the way that I approach this kind of issue that is happening currently in the brewing industry. And another side note, I usually don't try to dig too much into like the news, the crazy negative news, because that just kind of pollutes my mind as well. Of course, what I try to like just read headlines, and if it kind of like touches me personally, I dig a little bit more into it. But if you're generally like a good person, fundamentally have good habits, good leadership principles, you're going to be running a pretty good company and not being fired or sued or even incarcerated for trying to do this misbehavior towards your employees.
We're talking with Marcel Favela, the co-founder and leader of Border X Brewing. I swapped I was like, oh, the border's in there somewhere. Border X Brewing in 2 locations. So we did have a question from Kit Gutierrez asks, where are your locations? Let us know where those are at so listeners can check you out.
Yeah, our first location is in San Diego in Barrio Logan. So it's in 2181 Logan Avenue. It's next to Chicano Park under the Coronado Bridge. Just if you can Google it, Border, and then a letter X, and then Brewing. It should show up on Google right there. And the same name in LA, you can just kind of change your GPS coordinates. That's in the city of Bell in LA County. So it's pretty close to the center of LA, a couple of like 10, 15 minutes, depending on traffic, obviously. I realized that after setting up the brewery and kind of spending whole summer over there building the brewery. But yeah, it's in the city of Bell, and we mostly use Facebook, Instagram as well, Border X Brewing on both. You can follow us there. And we have live entertainment, we have new seasonal beers. And then we actually, just a side note, some new, we just opened a 3rd location in Barrio Logan, which, talking about inclusiveness, it's a Mujeres Brew Club. So it's run by women. We have a recent hire, a brewer. She's a female as well. Trying to keep that kind of heritage of women being the first brewers since the beginning of the brewing industry. So yeah, that's in as well in Logan. Top of my head, I don't remember it, but if you follow us on Facebook, Border X Brewing, they should be all the addresses right there on borderxbrewing.com. You should find the website.
Absolutely. Awesome. We've got people already commenting that they're excited to go visit. So good stuff. Now, awesome. Are you, and I know this isn't on the leadership side, but is the one in San Diego, is it walkable from the trolley?
Yes. It's like 10 minutes. It's pretty good weather. It's next to the ocean. So it's a nice walk, actually, because there's a lot of murals, a lot of parks. It's a lot of culture there. That's why we actually got invited to that community, because obviously, like I was mentioning before, I grew up in Mexico, and they were like, what are you guys doing all the way in a warehouse, like logistics warehouse, like all dry? Come here to Barrio Logan where the culture is. And our beers actually speak for themselves because they're super rich in ingredients. We say it's full of rich culture, Mexican culture. So we showcase that in our training that we give to our people and their actual ingredients. So yeah.
It's amazing in this industry as we look at from leadership perspective and how you target that. Are you familiar with the concept of the red ocean and blue ocean at all?
No, not on top of my head.
It's all right. There is one of the leadership books, and this idea of there are new markets out there for us to explore as we do different things. Mm-hmm. And as I've kind of this industry a little bit, I'm by no means expert. I know there's analysts out there, but there was, especially in the United States, the beer drinking culture, we had very similar products just competing for the same market. And then over the last, 20 years or more, as things have really expanded, you have businesses like yourselves who have said, no, there's so many different varieties that we don't have to just stick to the same style and taste of product. And you've brought in different influential ethnic tastes and flavors and saying there's such a broader thing. And we even got our friend Steve here to get some of that horchata in a brew. Just that's amazing. And the idea is that you've developed a different market of people who weren't traditional historical beer drinkers in the United States because they didn't want, you know, that flavor for whatever reason to go after. They wanted some refined taste, and you've been able to deliver that to a new market of people and expand that. And you're in San Diego, which is like the core of the craft beer industry.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we wanted to create our own market instead of trying to. It's more expensive to try and steal customers than actually create your own, because they're going to be more loyal if you actually, like, we call them evangelizing almost. It's like a marketing term that we used internally, just to convert them from like commercial beer that usually they just drink because it's cold and just because they want something socially to do. But what we provide is an option for them to actually be part of the process, be part of like something they believe in. We cater to, like you said, a whole new segment of people that were never into craft beer. And now because of that, they're probably exploring other breweries as well, looking for other, maybe trying to get into the IPAs, which are like the big boom in San Diego, but they're really hard to get into. Even for me as a brewer, at the beginning, it was like, damn, these beers are really resiny, hoppy, and just like, yeah. So yeah, definitely, we provided like a little platform, a cultural platform for them to get exposed, not just with the beverage. Like I said, we have music, we have artwork, we have everything. So we try to include like as many senses as we could to kind of complement that kind of beverage.
And I like what you said, Marcel, when you were working with your staff and your people from another leadership perspective, the idea of evangelism, there's this passion when you were talking about that. I know we're not from the spiritual side, but as a product, like this is how we're going to get our customers involved in training and teaching your people how to embrace that and own that.
Yeah, definitely.
Marcel, so as we wrap things up a little bit, as we're kind of coming to a close, typically we like to ask those that come with us, like, what would you recommend, or not what would you recommend, but what is a business practice that leaders who are listening to this podcast right now, because as we know, there's the different challenges that are going on, whether it be the apparent resurgence of COVID-19 and the effect that it has on businesses and businesses having to make some hard decisions there, or as it relates to what we've talked about before, great resignation, as people are leaving their workplaces looking to do something else. What would you recommend or as a best practice for those leaders that are listening out there to help them to take care of their people and overcome some of these current challenges?
Yeah, I totally went through that personally in our business in the brewery. Definitely, you have to like know your fundamentals, be solid on knowing that your people are part of the business. They're key like pieces that you initially pick, but they become family. They depend on you for livelihood, for support, for daily just talking to you. They create a positive feedback loop. So we actually, as leaders, like we went to the government. They were offering all this support, all this money to actually keep our employees. And the government was awesome on that side. We applied for all the loans and all the PPPs and trying to get all that payroll protection money so we can actually keep our employees. I don't know now with the second wave coming if they're trying to do something similar, but definitely always be a little bit savvy on the bureaucracy as well with the government, because that will take you miles ahead of anybody else, because that's a big roadblock for a lot of people who are scared of like just dealing with like politicians, council members, even your local, for us, alcohol beverage control, like president and all the members that kind of take part in your whole industry. Even though sometimes you look at them as the bad guys, they're actually wanting to help you as well. Whatever makes it easier for you and for them, it's actually good for the whole like group of the whole industry. So definitely support always your employees and always get maybe a little bit more involved with your local government.
Great.
One of the things I appreciate what we talked about earlier that's coming out now is just the idea of humility and just being real with your people. And I bring that up because there's a stat that just popped up where it says those who strongly agree their leader is genuine are about 7 times more likely to report having a strong team environment compared to all others, 4 times more likely to be committed, and 3 times more likely to have a good relationship with their manager. So being humble and being genuine with your people and building that environment and being passionate about that, not just having it just happen and just by accident, but being intentional and being passionate about keeping your employees, and not more so keeping your employees, but creating that psychological safety within your team. That's going to yield benefits and dividends for us moving forward.
Absolutely. And creating loyalty. We know, we've talked about it, Steve, that at any given time, almost 50% of your workforce is considering another job. And so it's incumbent on us as leaders to keep them together. And Steve, what are some of those other practical things? I know you've got some resources. If I'm a leader, I've heard from Marcel, these are some important things. I agree with them. What do I do? What's the next step for me?
Well, definitely feel free to reach out to us. Dale Carnegie, we do work with organizations and teams and individuals as well as it relates to bringing along their people and bringing on leaders to effectively lead their people through these changing times. And we do have a number of white papers on our website, ocdalecarnegie.com. We encourage you to visit that as well. And Marcel, where can our listeners connect with you in addition to hanging out at the breweries?
Yeah. So the LinkedIn, that's usually where I try to connect with everybody. So Marcel Favela, you'll see my profile pic right there. And I don't know if you saw me or you have my profile here on the podcast, so you'll recognize me right away. And I think my name is really not that common, so it should be fairly easy to find me.
Well, awesome. Well, listen, Marcel, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. Again, congratulations for being a new father. So congratulations to you and your lovely wife, Denise, for a new addition to the family. And look forward to hanging out with you soon. Once this thing clears up, man, we look forward to hanging out.
Same here.
So thanks so much.
We'll have to do a podcast meetup down at the
I know, right?
And said, everybody that's listening, be down there.
Bring your gear.
We'll do it.
Definitely. Well, listen, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us on the podcast. Again, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember that managers light a fire under people while leaders light a fire in people. Have a great week.